Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Filion. Welcome to today's drawing session. I hope you guys have been enjoying the sketchy 30 Faces 30-day challenge. And today, of course, is day 22, and one of my lessons was posted today. So this is the current artwork for today. I'll show you this one here. Which of course is my favorite subject. It's Frida inspired, so I'm super excited about that. And what I thought we would do today is do something a little bit different in this live drawing session, which is actually going back into an artwork that is already completed and kind of reworking it to make something completely new and different. So one of the things that's coming up in August that I'm really excited about is I've created a new class that is all about color. So it's called Color Fun in Procreate, and it's currently available in the Sketchy shop. And it kind of has this color theory focus, but I don't want to scare you guys away by using the word theory, because we're going to be just using fun, like color in such a fun and vibrant way. And so I thought it would be a great opportunity to also kind of play around with some color schemes today, because how I ended up doing this particular artwork here is I ended up making it kind of black and white with a contrast of color with just the skin tones of the portrait. So I thought we would rework this portrait and do something a little bit more colorful together. Something that's really cool too I wanted to mention to you guys that is happening currently in the Sketchy shop is right now they are having a big sale where they have 40% off if you guys use the code SAS40. If you buy 2 or more sketchy art classes, you will get 40% off, which is pretty cool. So that could be for the current sketchy 30 Faces 30 days, which you can still sign up for because you have lifetime access to it. Or it could be for my new class that's coming up in August, or any other class you guys are interested in. I even have a Frida class actually up on the Sketchy shop, which was one of my all-time favorite classes to do because of my love of Frida Kahlo. So I'm really excited today to draw this particular picture with you guys. So like I said, this is the lesson that is currently posted in Sketchy's 30 Faces 30 Days. And for those of you who've had a chance to look at the lesson already, it's about an hour long, and what we do is I take you through from start to finish of how to draw this portrait. And this, of course, isn't Frida. It's a Frida-inspired portrait, and you can find this portrait on the Sketchy app. Catherine Druin Quevedo is the name of the muse, and there is a link below here on YouTube for you guys to access that photo so that you can use it as your reference like I have done here. And it's a really beautiful photo that is very much inspired by Frida's own painting style. So I thought it was super fun to draw, and I kind of interpreted it in this way. And in my lesson, we used a variety of different drawing and painting techniques in Procreate. We used some stamping techniques. We also used some collage techniques. So everything in this drawing is drawn by hand except for the leaves in the background. So I'm just gonna check off this part of my portrait. So all of this is all drawn from scratch in Procreate with painting and drawing brushes, but the leaf is a wallpaper that was imported, and then we added some filters to it to turn it black and white. So all of that is in today's lesson. So I really hope you guys enjoy it. What I wanted to do right now is we are going to duplicate that drawing, and it's really important if you're working from a drawing that you've previously done to duplicate it. So what you guys saw me do is just swipe on my iPad screen and then choose duplicate, and then you get the new photo. So I'm gonna call this one Color Fun in honor of our new course. And sorry guys, I spell color with a U because I'm from Canada, but you could also spell it, of course, just O-R. So just to to mention that to you guys. And so we're going to call it Sketchy Color Fun, and I'm going to open up my new drawing. And what's really cool about digital artwork in general is this ability to go back in and experiment by duplicating artworks that you've already done. And this is something I haven't really delved into too much in my lessons in the Sketchy Art School, so I thought this would be a really cool thing to talk about today. So we're going back into an artwork that I was actually really happy with the outcome of this work, but I also had a lot of ideas running through my head as I was creating this of other ways I could have approached this drawing. So this gives me an opportunity to do that. So if I go into my layers, I can just, uncheck things that I've done. So uncheck the wallpaper, uncheck the splatter. I might even uncheck my birds. I'll uncheck my signature, which I think I probably added after the broadcast. I can't remember that exactly. And then I might even go crazy here and even take away, how far do I want to go? Maybe I'll take away the clothing as well. So it kind of has now pared this down to a point in the portrait where I only basically have the skin tone done. So it's really starting almost over from scratch. I haven't deleted anything yet because I can decide if I want to use any of those other elements. So it gives you so much flexibility. And if there's anything that you find, like I find that sometimes I get a little messed up and I can see things after I uncheck layers that I want to delete. So you'll have to kind of see if there's anything that's kind of hidden there on any of your layers. And of course I don't know, I can see this little spot and I don't know where it comes from. So let's see if I can find it on here. I thought it would have been on my eye details. I don't know, guys, I can't find it. I'll look for it later. So what we're going to do is we are actually going to create our own Frida-inspired color palette. And I thought that since I've already drawn this beautiful muse, maybe we could do it a little bit more inspired by Frida this time. So the actual Frida. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with this color scheme here. And I'll show you guys a really quick and easy way to create color palettes in Procreate. So if you go to palettes, so if you clicked on your color wheel and you click on palettes and you click on the plus button in the top corner, you're going to create a new palette. And I'm going to call this one Frida. And it's already set to my default palette. So if I go back to my disk view, you can see that I have an empty palette that's called Frida. And I'll just clear my history there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually import this photo, and this is just a photo that I found online, just with a simple Google search, Frida color palette. It came up. I love this painting of hers. I've always admired it, and I definitely think the raven picture that we drew for today's lesson was inspired by this style of painting of Frida with the animals and the greenery in the background. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to import this actual saved image into our Procreate canvas. So you're going to go up to the wrench icon, which is your actions panel, and you're going to go insert a photo. And then you're going to choose, and I have mine saved in an album. So I'm going to scroll down here. Sketchy Procreate 30 Days is my album. And I'm going to choose this photo. And what I've actually done is I've imported this into my picture. And I'm going to put it right up on top. And it just automatically, when it inserts it into Procreate, it calls it an inserted image. So you'll just see that. And you can rename it, and you can uncheck it and get rid of it. So you can use it as a reference. I know a lot of artists, instead of doing a split screen view, especially if they're working on a smaller iPad screen, they prefer to even bring their source photo into Procreate in this way too. So it kind of depends how you like to work. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to color pick from this painting. So I'm going to go back to my color wheel, and I'm going to, with my finger, just tap and hold until I get that yellow color, and then I'm going to tap it into my palette. So it's as easy as that. So I'm going to do that to the next color, and then the next, and I'm just going to keep adding them to my palette. Now, in my new class that starts in August, which is called Color Fun, In this class, we talk about a variety of color schemes. So I actually take you guys through doing a monochromatic color scheme, a complementary color scheme, an analogous color scheme. So we actually talk about a little bit about the color theory behind those schemes, and then we put it into practice in a portrait, drawing a portrait from start to finish in Procreate. And one of the cool features that I talk about in the class is using Procreate's built-in color harmony tool. So if you click on harmony, you can actually go up to the top here, and they have a variety of color schemes listed for you. So complementary, split complementary, analogous, triadic, and tetradic. And I talk about those color schemes in the class in a lot of detail. For today, we are going to be working with color temperature. So what I wanted to kind of talk about mostly is the fact that this portrait divides its composition chromatically. So what we have is we have a warm color scheme in the foreground. So Frida's skin color, for example, is kind of yellows and oranges and reds. So it's this part of the palette. So that's the warm part of our color scheme. And then we have the cool colors in the background with the cool blue and the greens. And so that division of color is what really makes this painting pop. And just kind of knowing how to work those color schemes into your artworks can make a huge difference in your outcomes. So that's something we just go into a lot of detail in the new class. So yeah, we're working with a warm and cool color scheme, as I mentioned. And if I go to one of these colors, for example, so let's say I choose the blue color, and I choose what is complementary to that blue, and I'm actually going to choose, complementary here. So you can actually grab a color right next to it that you know is going to be complementary to that color, which is generally speaking an opposite on the color wheel. Something I want to note too, though, is that Procreate's complementary colors are slightly different than traditional art's complementary color schemes, where in traditional art, a blue would be across from an orange on a color wheel. In Procreate, you can see that it's a little bit different the way their color harmony tool works, and we talk about that again in the class. So I'm going to just use this complementary just to kind of create a secondary scheme that kind of might be interesting. And you can see it's creating a completely dramatic, different effect here. And I'll just grab that in. Something happened here. I think I grabbed the wrong one. So hold on. If this happens to you, this is good practice. You're just going to tap and delete it. And I just need to make sure I select the right color. There we go. So I wanted to show you guys that tool. And again, it's something we go into much more detail in the class in August. So we're going to use this as inspiration for our color scheme. I'm going to uncheck that for now. And then what I've done is I've saved a picture of Frida that we're going to use to actually influence the portrait itself. So what I want to start with first is talking about in terms of composition. So my Frida is actually turned facing right, and this Frida is turned facing left. If you find yourself looking at a reference photo where you want to change the position, what you can do is you can go into Edit on your iPad. So this is just in iOS. And you can go to the Crop tool. And up at the top, there's a Flip Horizontal tab. So you can see it at the very, very top left. If I click on that, it's just flipped my image. So now she's facing the same way as my actual painting. So it just makes it a lot easier to reference. And I'm just kind of saved that by pressing done. And what we're going to do is we're going to take what we've already drawn and make her a little bit more Frida. And one thing we can do is I'm going to do kind of a crazy move right now. Oh, it was on my sketch layer. You know how I couldn't find that little bump? It was on the sketch layer. Okay. So I'm actually going to delete a couple of layers. And remember, I can take risks because I have saved this as a separate duplicate file. So I think that's really helpful too because you can take a lot more risks this way. And I'm going to move the clothing just in another layer, and I'm actually going to merge all of that together. So I've merged all my color layers together, and I'm going to rename them just color. And now it's all in one layer, and we're going to kind of manipulate and play with it. Before I keep going and talking even more, I want to double check and see if you guys have any questions or comments. If you have questions along the way, please ask them. I'd be happy to answer them. Sometimes I just keep going with my drawing and I forget to look at your amazing comments. So a lot of people from all over the world, which is super cool. Los Angeles, Brooklyn, New York. Hi guys, I'm in Ontario, Canada right now. That's where I'm from. And again, if you guys have questions along the way of anything that I'm doing or anything to do with today's lesson or the upcoming class, just let me know, okay? Drop a comment in the chat. So back to our Frida portrait. We are going to do something a little crazy. On this color layer that I've merged all together, we're going to use our Liquify tool, and I have to make sure it's open. Oh, it's on alpha lock, so I got to take off alpha lock. And we're going to go into adjustments, which looks like a magic wand, and choose Liquify. And we're going to distort our picture a little bit. So I'm going to bring the bridge of the nose out. Do you guys see how I just did that? Because what I'm doing is I'm going to make her look more like Frida. So we've already drawn our sketchy muse in the one portrait, and this one we're going to modify and make it more like Frida. So this is my little cheater way of doing that, where we can just adjust the face shape a little bit. We bring that cheek in a little bit. And we can take a portrait that we've already done, which of course, I mean, you can't work miracles. If you drew a portrait of somebody completely different that didn't look like Frida, you're not going to be able to use the Liquify tool to change it. But since she already looked so much like Frida, we can just do a few tweaks and really make it look like the real deal. Okay, so just a couple of tweaks, especially I wanted to do that to the nose. And then what I wanted to do too, I'm going to leave that its own layer and do another layer above. I'm going to still name it color because clearly I am not creative with my naming of layers. And I'm going to use a gouache brush. So I'm a little bit obsessed with using the gouache brush. Procreate's gouache brush is found under painting. And if you just scroll down, you'll find gouache. And I loved it so much that I ended up making my own gouache brush set. So I've been using that. So if you guys don't have my brush set, you can of course use Procreate's brush. I use that forever. So if you're following along with me today, just use the gouache set. But if you are interested in the brush set that I'm using right now, you can find it on my Etsy, which is Pixel Princess Art. So in my brush set, it's all gouache brushes, but they kind of behave a little bit differently. And one of my favorite ones to use is the gouache soft brush because it has this really nice kind of flowy kind of texture to it. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to reduce my opacity to about 50%. And I'm just going to, actually, you know what? I'm going to go more to like 37. And I'm just going to kind of make these eyebrows a little bit more intense. And already I feel like that's a little bit more Frida-like. Reduce my opacity even more just to create a bit of like a shadowed effect on the eyebrows. And of course the eyebrows are really part of Frida's signature look, as well as the flowers in her hair. And I just want to make these really, really bold and stand out. So I've kind of increased how dramatic these eyebrows are. And then a trick that I like to do with the same brush with a skin tone around it, I'm grabbing the skin tone from right near those eyebrows, And I'm just using it to soften certain areas. So in the middle of her brows, we'll just soften that up. And I'm going to take a darker version of that skin tone, so like dark brown. And again, this is on a very low opacity. I'm going to use this photo as my reference just to make the shadowing a bit more dramatic. And like I was saying before, this is just such a great exercise to go back into a portrait that you've already created and duplicate it and then try something completely new. Sorry guys, hopefully, I think we cut out for a minute. I don't know what happened. So hopefully, I just noticed that it shut off, so hopefully we didn't go too far without it being live. So apologies for that. What I was just saying though is that you can see what I've done so far is I've added just shadows. So what we've seen here is just an experiment with using different colors to create kind of more dramatic shading with our color layer that we already have. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this now. I don't know why I'm having internet issues, so apologies for that. Okay, so what we're going to do next is use our smudge tool. And those shadows that I've just laid down, just in areas that I want to kind of blend them further, I'm just using my smudge tool again on the same brush, which is my soft gouache brush, or you guys can use also the Procreate brush. And that just helps us blend out. And I love doing this especially with eyebrow hairs because you can kind of just with the blend tool create texture as well. So I'm kind of just making that texture for the eyebrow hair a little bit more dramatic. Looks a little bit more natural this way too. So we're just using that blend tool to move around the color. And if it's too intense, just reduce your opacity. And again, just blending out these shadows. So I'm going to go back to our Frida inspired image where the skin tone is very yellow. So it has this painterly quality to it. So we're going to go to the Frida colors, the yellows that we've grabbed from our portrait. And we're just going to do a little bit of an overlay in about the 40% range. Let's see, that might be too much. I'm going to go down a little bit more. So in the 25% range, that's better. We're just going to go over our portrait with yellow. And again, I'm using my custom soft gouache brush. And then I'm just going to touch up the lips a little bit. And I'm actually going to use the red that we grabbed from the Frida painting to just add a bit more detail to the lips. And then I'm also going to use that same red on a really low opacity on the cheekbones. I also love doing the ball of the nose, kind of a rosy color, so I'm going to do that right now. It's going to look a little bit Rudolphy at first, and then we'll just blend it out, because I think you can add a lot of dimension that way. So another benefit of coming back to your portraits is, I know for me, sometimes when I'm working on something for a really long time, I might lose interest in it, and then coming back to it kind of re-energizes you again to look at that portrait fresh with fresh eyes, right? And see kind of maybe some of the mistakes that you made or some of the things that you could improve on. So for me, I know I filmed this lesson for the 30 days a while ago. So even though I still really like the portrait that I did, the black and white portrait, I'm at a point now where I've been far enough removed from it that I can go back into it and create something new from it as well. So I kind of created a little bit more of a crease there to be a bit more like Frida. Again, just upping the drama and the shadows of the face. I'm going to go back to a yellow, this time the darker yellow. And I'm also going to just blend with the side of my Apple pencil. And I'm on low opacity. I'm at about 30%. I spent a really long time perfecting my own gouache brushes because, like I was saying before, I love the Procreate gouache brush so much. It became my favorite brush for creating portraits, that I wanted to create a set that would be exactly what I was looking for. So I was inspired by the original gouache brush to create these brushes. And then I kind of tweaked them and perfected them to make them exactly the way I want them to behave. So this one here, I'll just show you guys, has a really soft, kind of nice textured quality to it. I also have a gouache fine tip that I use for fine details. So it's more like almost like a pencil, so it has a very fine tip if I'm working on the tip of my Apple pencil. I have a flat brush that has a nice flow to it and kind of like a flat edge instead of a rounded edge. I have a gouache flow brush, and this one's like almost like wet on wet. So do you see how nicely that one flows? I love using that for hair. And then my other brush that I made is an intense gouache brush, so it's very dramatic and you don't have to apply much pressure, and it kind of builds up layers of paint. So I've enjoyed experimenting with creating my own brushes, and then using them on my portraits, of course. So I'll use that intense brush right now. Why not? And just, again, add that little bit of drama to the ball of the nose. And let's add a little bit of drama to the cheekbone too. And you just have to be careful with it because it really kind of has this like stained effect, which can be really interesting. I'll use it in the hair as well. So you can really make things dark really quickly. So just bring out some of the hair there a little bit. I'm going to get off the intense one and go back to my soft just for the blending on the face. Yeah, and using the yellow, because our idea behind this portrait is not only to kind of change the color scheme, but also to make it a little bit more dramatic. And I'm going to use, of course, that color and then just bring it up a little bit more. Might do that more for the neck. Little pops of yellow, just make them really painterly. I'm going to bring my opacity down. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm just going to erase that. I keep finding these little blotches everywhere. Okay, so now that I have this more or less the color scheme that I want for the face, I want to go back into the wallpaper effect. So I ended up importing in a wallpaper, and then we ended up changing the luminosity and changing the opacity of it or the saturation of it. So I'm going to delete that wallpaper, and I'm going to import another one. So insert a photo. I'm again going to go down to my sketchy 30 days and choose that photo here, fit it to screen, but this time we're going to keep it in the greens. So it almost looks like she's coming out from a jungle now, right? So I'm going to keep it green, and you can of course create your own leaves as well and copy and paste them, which I show you guys how to do with the birds. Or if you love just drawing the intricacy and the detail of every single leaf and having them all be a little bit different, you can of course do that too. But this is just a really easy way to add that pop of color into your background. And from there, what I'm going to do is go over top of that inserted image and just call this layer leaves. And what I am going to do is on my inserted image itself, let me see. Okay, we'll go back to the leaf layer. What we're going to do is we're going to grab the color that we got from the Frida painting, and we're going to do a really soft wash. I think I'm going to use the Gouache Flow brush for this one. Again, you can just use the regular gouache brush. And I'm just going to go over top. It doesn't have to be perfect, but some of these leaves, it's almost like painting a coloring book at this point. Can like darken certain areas. I also want to use that yellow. Actually, this leaf that I already kind of colored, I kind of think it would be good as the yellow leaf. So I might end up painting it all yellow. And then you could even go back in with an eraser and pull out the green stems, which could be kind of a cool opposite effect. And the other thing you could possibly experiment with too is if you go to your wallpaper, you could choose the selection tool, which looks like a little ribbon. And you could do an automatic selection where, whoops, let's go back to it here. Where you go in and you pull out the white. This might be kind of painstaking to do, so this is just a suggestion. I don't know if I'm going to leave it on that because you'd have to go in and go into each and every single one of these little white areas. And what you could do is then you could take your blue color for the background, and I have my gouache flow brush, and I could just paint in that blue color. So what I've done is I've taken out the background, right? I didn't take it out everywhere, so this might end up looking really strange, but we'll just go for it. And it's kind of like a blue-gray. And I'm going to change brushes and just add a little bit more detail to it. Make it a little bit lighter in certain spots. And then if you uncheck that, you can see how it's coming through in the background. So that might be something that you might want to experiment with as well. The other thing you could do is even on that wallpaper layer, take an eraser. And I actually might take an eraser using painting, using my round brush. And I mean, you could do this with the selection tool as well, but sometimes the eraser is just really easy to work with. You could go in and you could remove a certain section, like so. And then you could, at that point, you know, fill in that layer with that blue color. And in the painting, it kind of has a little bit of a like cloud effect to it, so maybe just add a few brush strokes in there. So I'm kind of looking at this for inspiration. I want to go back to Frida though, before we go too far with the background, and create a hair layer. And then what I think we're going to do is on the original color layer, I'm actually going to erase some of this. Here we go. So erase anything that I don't need. And then on the hair layer, I'm going to use my gouache blow brush on a smaller brush. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of use it to create wispy brush strokes for her hair. And if you found the leaves too distracting at this point, you could turn off that background layer as well. And in this picture, she's got like this beautiful hairstyle, so we could kind of mimic that a little bit. It's almost like an infinity sign here. And then we could take that lighter shade, which I actually think if I use my complementary color to the background, this kind of purpley color, it could be kind of nice. So on a lower opacity, same brush, I'm just going to create a few swoops. Just to suggest the braids. I love with hair, again, if you guys have been following Sketchy's 30 Faces 30 Days, you'll probably see a lot of the hair that I do is more suggesting the hair rather than going into a lot of detail with hair. So I feel like this is also a little bit along those lines of just suggesting it. And then we could even bring in some of the lip color for some red highlights, reddy pink highlights. And this brush, or any brush that has some streakiness to it, would be really good for this exercise. And I'm just trying to blend it a little bit by going over it with different opacities. So I'm just increasing my opacity now. And what I'm doing is I'm creating darks at the roots and then lights in the middle where the light would fall and create a highlighted effect. And then you could also take your smudge tool, and if you want to just make it really precise, go in and any little imperfections, you can just smudge them out and also blend in those shades that we just put down. Do it over here as well. There we go. And now we've given her this really, I think, really nice hairstyle. We can create another layer above our color layer called maybe shirt. And this was the old clothing layer that I had done, which was really abstract. For this one, we could still go abstract, or we could even take it into a different direction. So maybe if I go to my soft gouache brush, and we'll go to white, I'll make my opacity at 100%. So she's actually got kind of a rounded necked shirt here. As soon as you add in that white to ground it, it really helps because now we're not too overwhelmed by the plants anymore. And I might just create a neckline there and then go back to my color layer and fill that in. And then go back to the shirt. A lot of it is going back and forth between different layers. And then in the lesson, for this original lesson, we had done everything Frida related in a group called Frida. So that's really handy right now because what we can do is we can take that entire group and we can click on the transform tool and we can make her bigger or smaller. So I kind of want less shirt and a bigger head. So I'm just gonna change kind of that size of my overall portrait. Again, another advantage of working in Procreate for sure. I'm going to put the shirt maybe below the color layer, just see how that works out. And on my color layer, I'm going to fix this neckline a little bit. So I was mentioning to you guys before about the color, the Fun with Color class that's coming up in August. And I'm really excited about it because we're going to be really working intensely with color and talking a lot about how you can add color in really fun ways to your portraits to really make them pop, or how you can kind of develop your style through color. And we're going to be using our knowledge of color theory, but also using Procreate's built-in color tools that I showed you earlier in the stream. So built into Procreate, we have the Harmony tool, for example, where we can change and experiment with color schemes. So that's going to be something, a lot of fun that we'll be doing in the new class. We also even talk about color mixing. So even though we're working digitally, I'm still a big proponent of the fact that you can mix all your own colors. I know it sounds funny to say you're mixing digital colors, but I think even like kind of what I'm doing right now, blending them and moving the color around, I'm creating new colors that I then can pick up by tapping and holding and grabbing those colors. And that's how I kind of consider a mixing of color in Procreate. So we're going to be also looking at mixing skin tones and creating all sorts of different color schemes. And also picking color schemes that suit the subject of your portrait as well. So that's another topic that we will be looking at. I'm going to change my eraser back to gouache. And we'll go back to the shirt. So I haven't checked the comments in a while. Sorry, I'm not ignoring you guys. I just want to see. I'm going to move the shirt over top again. I get obsessed with my drawing and then I forget to look at the comments. So I tried digital painting with a Wacom tablet on Photoshop and used the smudge tool, but it kind of destroyed maybe the painting. Yeah, I find that using the smudge tool, I always say use it sparingly no matter what program you're doing, because even in Procreate as well as in Photoshop, it really applies to any platform you're using. I think that you could have the effect of it looking too smooth and then too overly digital, which I mean is a style on its own. But for me to do something like a little bit more natural, I like to have brush strokes showing. I don't want, like as you can see when you zoom in here, there's a lot of brush strokes going on. There's some hatching, there's some splattering, which we did in the previous lesson for 30 days. So, I mean, just to have that texture, even if I'm far away, it might look fairly smooth. I love the idea of being able to kind of look closer at the portrait and then see those details. Another question from Monique is how do you do the side by side so that the reference photo is to the left and what you're working on the right? Yeah, so the side-by-side view, I get a lot of questions about it. It's actually built into iOS, so it's built into your iPad, and you have to have a fairly newish, in the last few years, iPad in order to have it work, because I know some of the older iPads, you can't do the update that allowed for split screen view, so double check what iPad you have. But if you have a new iPad within the last few years, you should be able to do it. So what you're going to do is you're going to just open Procreate like normal. And then at the bottom, you're going to swipe up, if I can do it, so that you get your dock at the bottom. And then you'll want to have your Photos app either on your dock permanently, which is what I've done, or you've recently opened it, so it's over here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to click on it. And of course, I'm not doing a great demonstration of it right now. Hold on. You're going to click on it and drag. And this is really important that you don't let go. You move it to the left, and then you let it snap in place. And when you snap it, it'll do a split screen view where it's half and half. And then you'll just take this little white tab here and you will just shift it over to the left so that you've got a kind of a 2/3, or I guess a 1/3 view. This is 2/3, 1/3, right? So this is the preference. This is the way that I prefer to draw because I like having my source photo side by side. I prefer having it not be in my drawing, especially just for replay videos, because sometimes I like to post my time-lapse videos, and then that way you don't see the actual reference photo in your time-lapse. So this is my preference personally. But like I was saying before, if you're working on a smaller iPad screen, maybe you don't want to take up that real estate with the photos. So maybe you want to have another device open, or you want to import it into Procreate. So it just kind of depends on what your preference is. Okay. I want to go back to my color over layer because those eyebrows are not what I want. I want to go on my gouache fine tip brush. Alternatively, if you don't have my brush pack, you can use any kind of pencil or something that's got a fine tip to it. And I just want to add back in the texture of the eyebrows. So I'm jumping around a little bit, guys, but I am back on my color layer where I've been doing all the tweaks to this portrait for the skin. So that's pretty intense, but I love it. I love those intense eyebrows. I feel like it also helps me to answer your questions. If you guys have more questions, please ask, because then what happens is when I look back at my portrait with fresh eyes, then I can see the things that I want to do next. So I don't know if you've ever found that before, but it can be really helpful to walk away for a while, or even to rotate your portrait. That's something else that I find really useful, to zoom in and out, because you can see things zoomed out that maybe you don't see when you're right in there, or even working upside down for a while, or in any rotation might help you to see things that you would have otherwise missed. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna make these eyebrows way more intense. Love it. And then same with the kind of the hair that comes out of the side of the face here. Just put a few suggestions of a hairline, which the brush actually did kind of a good job of doing already, but we'll just increase that a bit. And we could also increase the facial hair a little bit, maybe. Frida herself always emphasized it as well. We'll do a little bit of hatching. And then I'm also going to still use this fine tip brush just to add a little bit of kind of hatching under the chin, which is just lines side by side here, just to create more of a shadow effect. And almost a bit of an outline just to really make my portrait pop. So something else that I really like to do with portraits, we already talked about the fact that we're going to have like green in the background, which is a cool color, and then we're going to have more yellowy pink skin tones, especially the pink, which is more of a warm color. And what you can also do, though, is you can start to mix cool tones into the warmth of your skin tone. So if I actually look at Frida's portrait, it has some green in it. So I could just kind of grab some green from the plant in the background. And I love doing this in my portraits, is just adding these little pops of cool color. So let's just add it to the eyebrows here. And kind of even take a more intense green. And I can see that she did that in her paintings as well, which I just think is a really beautiful way of tying in your color schemes. So it's a way of adding warm and cool colors together. You do need to make sure that you don't overdo it, because if you add too many cool tones to your skin tones, they can start to look not very alive and vibrant anymore. So we're just going to use it sparingly. But I'm going to use it as shadows. So wherever I would naturally kind of have a little bit of a shadow effect, I'm going to add in green. Can you guys see that if I zoom out? That effect of adding green to the skin tone. And then also to the hair too. So to the little pieces of hair where they connect to the face, we're going to do some hatching lines. And we're going to do them in that same green. Zoomed out, it's really subtle. But as soon as you zoom in, you can see it in a lot more detail. I'm going to take a dark green, so like a forest green, and I'm going to make my brush really large. And this is what I'm actually going to outline my portrait with and do some of my hatching with under the chin. I'm going to use that forest green. And I'm going to go bold with it too. So wherever there's really dark colors, I'm going to use this really dark green. Even maybe a little bit in the eye just as a reflection. And I'm going to outline the whole chin line with it. I'm going to re-outline it with this color. And then I'm going to take my smudge tool and just smudge out some of that hatching. So I was talking about using it sparingly because you don't want it to look overly digital. The point here is not to remove all the hatching lines. I still want some of that texture, but I can just soften it a little bit. Something like that I really like. And then you can even take that new color that it's created. So this is where our color mixing kind of comes in. And you can use it to maybe outline where the shirt meets the skin here. And maybe you can even grab some green to add in some of those areas. And then take your smudge tool. And again, just smudge out that area. Make it really natural looking. But now we have a bit of a shadow effect that kind of finishes that edge a little bit nicer than it was before. Hopefully that makes sense. Her ear kind of got hidden by my previous hair layer, so what I kind of want to do, let's see, I want to find out what layer that's on. I'll go to my hair layer here. Take some of that away. And then what I want to do on my color layer is I want to redraw in the ear. And again, I'm using my Frida painting as my reference rather than the original sketchy reference. And I'm going to color pick from the colors that I've already set down. And I'm using still my very fine tip brush. And I kind of like that I have the strange green of the plant in the background because we can work with that, right? Because we've already started using green as our shadows, so I might just keep going with that. Add a little bit of black over top. And then use our smudge tool just to blend. I'm going to make my brush smaller, but just to blend those shades in. I hope you guys are enjoying the sketchy 30 faces 30-day challenge. I've really enjoyed learning from the other artists. I've enjoyed seeing what everybody has been creating, and then just being part of this community of people that are drawing for the month of July. And just a reminder to you guys, if you haven't signed up for that class for 30 faces 30 days, you don't have to do it in sync with everybody else. You can still sign up right now. And Sketchy has that promo code on right now where you can get 40% off. And the links to everything for my new class that's starting in August, as well as the Sketchy 30 days, is all in the comments below here. So if you're interested in learning more about Procreate or portrait drawing, you can get all that info down below. Okay, we're running out of time a little bit here, so let's work on our shirt a little bit more. So I'm just going to, with that same, I guess I should make sure I'm on the right layer. Yeah, okay. With that same kind of pencil-y gouache brush, the fine tip gouache brush, alternatively, another one that I would really recommend, if you don't have my brush set, you could use Procreate's Peppermint Pencil, which can be found under sketching. That's one of my favorite pencils to use these days. I'm just going to really kind of almost abstractly, I guess, put in some of the creases and folds for this shirt and give it a bit of an outline. And again, we're going to use that smudging technique to make this look better, because, you know, this doesn't look the greatest right now. So we just did a bunch of scribbles, right? And then I'm going to go to my gouache flow brush, which is nice and soft. And I'm just going to, like, in a really painterly way, kind of add in some brush marks, and then I'm going to add some white over top of that and go kind of back and forth a little bit between the different colors. And then I'm going to take my smudge tool, and this is where it's hopefully going to look better, is I'm going to just kind of take these surrounding colors and blend them. And I find it's a great way for creating folds in fabrics. Make it a bigger brush if you want to smudge off more or less color. Obviously make it a smaller brush then. And I haven't done my folds exactly like the Frida picture. I'm someone who usually likes to improvise a little bit. Even with today's artwork, I went in with semi of a plan. So my plan was to show you guys this painting, to talk a little bit about the color theory behind it using a warm and cool color scheme. But then other than that, I kind of tend to work more intuitively. So as I'm drawing, I kind of figure out along the way what works best for the portrait or what I'm enjoying doing at the time. So that's how I've kind of been drawing this today. It's just going with the flow a little bit and experimenting, always experimenting and trying new things. So now I'm going to do a few more brush marks on here. And then back to our inserted image layer and leaf layer. So I kind of want to have more fun with this inserted image. So I'm going to go to the leaf layer now. And I want to create more kind of effects in the background. So I'm going to grab this blue that Procreate generated for me, and I'm just going to tone it back a little bit. So it's like a baby blue. And I'm going to use another one of my brush sets, which are my watercolor stamps. So these are also found on my Etsy. And I've been using them a lot in the 30 Faces, 30 Days challenge. But again, if you want to use something similar, you could check out Procreate's spray paint brushes under Splatter or Flicks, or you could check out Procreate's water as well, drips and blotches and water flicks. Those are great alternatives. But with my watercolor stamps, I've created a whole bunch of stamps from real watercolor where I can create these kind of painterly effects that I'll show you guys right now, where you can just, I don't know if you can see this, where you can just kind of lay down with a few strokes to create kind of a painterly watercolor kind of splatter effect. So I might add a few of those in. And I'm going to use some of the inspiration, of course, from this painting, but it is ultimately my own artwork, right? So I'm going to do my own thing as well. So I'm going to use a wet on wet. I just used the splatter brush, but now I'm going to use wet on wet. And you could also do something like, this is what I enjoy doing too. So another thing that I like to do is I like to stamp like this and then take away the stamp. So go to the eraser tool and go to another one of my watercolor stamps. So I'll go back to splatter 1. And with the eraser tool, do like a reverse effect, which is a lot of fun because then you can see what I mean. You can like have this back and forth kind of happening where you can figure out what you want stamped and what you want to keep from the image. So I've actually gone ahead and deleted some of the other cool stuff that I did, but that's okay. So this was under leaves, but it's not turning out to be really my leaves anymore. Maybe I'm going to bring that yellow splotch back in a different way. So she's got this bright yellow leaf here. I'm going to do it with like more of like a watercolor splatter. So do something like that. Maybe a streak. Because it's a stamp, sometimes you have to experiment a little bit to see where you want it placed. And actually, I might do this streak as something different. So I'm going to call this paint. And then I might make it really big. And then once you've stamped it, you can rotate it and you can manipulate it. So I might just do it as a big kind of swipe in the background. And before we get too far away on things, I want to wrap this up fairly soon. So I want to take a look to see if you guys have any more questions or comments. Okay, so just double checking that you guys, are you using the pencil on the side or the tip? I kind of go, so Janice asked that question, I kind of go back and forth when I was using my gouache pencil. I was doing a little bit of both, so I'll just go back there for a second to, whoops, go up to my gouache pack. So I was using the gouache fine tip, which acts a lot like a pencil. And I'll just go to my shirt layer for a second. So if I use it on the tip at max, it looks like this. But if I use it on the side, it looks like that. So there's a little bit of a difference. So that's the side of my pencil. And then this is the tip of my pencil on its maximum size setting. So it just bleeds a little bit more on the side. And you'll find that with a lot of the pencils and just experimenting with which ones work the best for you. I absolutely love the Apple Pencil because when I first started drawing in Procreate, I was just using like a regular stylus because it was before the iPad Pros came out and it was before the Apple Pencil even existed. So when the Apple Pencil came out, it was a huge relief to me. I was like so thankful that Apple made something that is going to be exactly what I wanted. And yeah, it's really a great tool. So yeah, I'm on the shirt layer now. I kind of like to jump around a little bit, sorry guys. And I'm just gonna do a few more kind of tweaks to the shirt itself. And take my eraser, whoops, that eraser was on my splatter. Just go to my round brush eraser and just clean up edges. Eraser becomes a really important tool for doing these cleanup steps. There we go. And I actually think my shirt layer too could be, looking at it when I zoom out, it could be a little bit wider. So just gonna widen that up a little bit, which is gonna change everything. Leave it to me to do that at the last minute. And then I'll go back and fix this shading. Again, it was zooming out, right, that showed me that my proportion was a little bit funny, so it's very helpful to zoom in and out. Okay, and then I'm gonna go back to that shirt and still smudge in some of these lines that I had just put down. I could also do something, again, a little bit more experimental and go to spray paints, for example, and maybe flicks and add some kind of watercolor spray paint effects to the shirt, which I really like, the little flicks that you can add. And I also have my own flicks too in my watercolor set called Splatter 3, and I love adding those. And I'm going to just put them on max and kind of do a little bit of an intense splatter, maybe just in that corner and a little bit there. And then you can take your eraser and erase anything that you don't like. You could do that on a separate layer as well. I'm doing it on the shirt layer, but you could have a whole separate splatter layer. And we could also do the thorns too. And I'm creating a new layer for that. And for this, we're actually going to use, I'm going to use the shale brush under calligraphy. So this is one of Procreate's brushes. And I'm going to use that yellow that we picked up before and just mute it a little bit into the more golds. And we'll just, with the shale brush, find the right width. Okay, I like this width now. And we're not going to do it exactly like the Frida painting, but I am using the Frida painting as kind of a guide. So just doing kind of little branches coming off of her. And like I was mentioning before too, a while ago I did a whole class in the Sketchy Art School of that was completely inspired by Frida, which was a really fun class. So if you guys even want to use that special 40% off code right now to order 2 classes, you could get the color class that I'm going to be doing in August, and you could also do the Frida class too if you're interested, if you are obsessed with Frida like I am. But I mean, who isn't obsessed with Frida? She's so great. So we're going to do the thorns, and then I'm going to make that a little bit darker, and I'm just going to do like an outlined edge for these thorns. So some of them are going to go over top. Hold on, I'll just start over here. Some of them are going to go over top of each other, and then some of them will go underneath. So you'll have to decide which ones are on your top layer. And I like this shale brush because it's a nice smooth brush, whoops, but it has a bit of a texture to it that makes it a little bit more organic. So if you've seen any of my lessons for 30 Faces, 30 Days, or even my previous classes, oftentimes I've used the shale brush for eyelashes, actually. I like using them for eyelashes because I find that you can just get a really nice eyelash effect with it. That outline wasn't very nice. 2-finger tap to undo is like the best thing ever that Procreate did because it makes it so fast. Okay, so we're getting there. So I'm going to be finishing up fairly soon, guys. So if you have any last questions or comments, please put them in the comments right now. There's so much you could do to this portrait, and I find on average I probably usually spend about 3 hours on a portrait in Procreate. So, oh, hold on guys, I might need to just refresh my app. There we go. Sorry, the app I'm using, it keeps notifications up on the screen. Okay. So if it's bouncing around a little for a second, it'll settle down. So yeah, I usually take, I was saying before, probably on average about 3 hours to do a portrait. So I always feel like when I do the live videos here, I can never quite finish doing exactly what I want to do. Okay, we're almost done. This I can tweak a little bit later on, but you guys get the idea. So the outlines can take a while. And then you could add your little thorns. I would have to keep adding that, but you guys get the idea there. And then we could bring in our bird again. So what I might do is bring in one of these birds. Let's see, which one do we want? Bring in this guy. And we're gonna bring it above everything that we've done. And then I'm taking my transform tool and I'm gonna kind of place it in a similar, I mean, obviously it's not in the same pose, but we're just gonna kind of do something a little bit similar. Maybe something like that. And then you could keep adding more and more animals into this portrait, and you know, you could keep going on it. I want to add butterflies into the hair. I would probably go in and create some of my own leaves to incorporate into it. So there's lots and lots that you could do. So I'm just going to somebody's asking about my brushes. So maybe if you guys want to see the brushes, I don't know if we can add a link right now, but they are in my Etsy shop, which is Pixel Princess Art, all one word. So I'm also Pixel Princess on the Sketchy app as well. So yeah, and there's also links in the 30 Faces 30 Days. Whenever I do use my own watercolor brushes, Sketchy has placed a link at the top of the lesson for each day. So if that's something you're interested in, that should be in that location. And thanks, Nakira says she'll have to rewatch some of it. Yeah, sorry, I know we cut out at one point during the broadcast here, so hopefully you guys don't miss too much of it. That's what happens sometimes when you're live. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed experimenting today with Procreate. So I want to show you the difference. I'm going to go to my gallery view. I'm not done probably. I want to keep working on this portrait, but I'm going to go out and you can see a side by side. So I'm going to just go like this. This is my original portrait from today's lesson, day 22 of 30 Faces, 30 Days. And this is what we've done today. So we've modified it quite a bit. We've changed the color. The face isn't quite Frida's face. It's kind of like a hybrid, I think, between today's muse and Frida, which is kind of interesting. And it is something that I would want to keep working on. Like I said, I think it could do so much more with the background. But what I really love about working with color is being able to play around with different color schemes and also have this contrast of colors. So as I was mentioning before, we have our warmer colors in the foreground with the face, and then we have our cooler colors in the background with the leaves. And then that splotch of yellow, I think, kind of ends up tying it a little bit together too. It's kind of this nice link between the background and the foreground. And in my new class, which starts in August, I'm really excited about it because we're going to be talking about color in depth. We're going to be using Procreate's color tools in order to create really interesting color harmonies. We're going to be mixing our own digital paint. And of course, we're going to be learning how to draw proportions of portraits and then applying colors to those portraits in really interesting ways. And something that is a little bit different about the class that's starting in August is that I'm going to be doing a live broadcast every week for the month of August. So for those of you guys that want to sign up now and actually watch it and kind of participate in the class in real time, you'll get that live kind of interaction and ability to ask me questions or share each other's artwork live once a week. So for every Wednesday in August, I will be doing a live video, and then you'll also have the lessons that come out each week a few days before so that you're able to have a chance to work on the lessons by yourself a little bit first before you watch the live broadcast. So I'm really, really excited about that. That's coming up. And just a mention again that you guys can sign up now in the Sketchy shop. The link is below. And of course, if you want to add a second class or more classes to your order, Sketchy has a really great promo right now to get 40% off. So using the code, let me double check the code here for you guys, SAS40. You can get that 40% off for 2 or more classes. So you might be interested in my class, 30 Faces, 30 Days, maybe my Frida class, if you love Frida as much as I do. And I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for joining me today and hanging out with me while I have fun playing with color in Procreate. I hope to see you guys in August in my new class, Fun with Color, and have a great day, guys. Bye.